Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Vulnerability, inspired by the Resilience Project. We always should give them a shout out. And today we have Moesha, or better known as Mo Johnson, with us. Hi, Mo.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
well, we are good, and we are so excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your vulnerability and answer some challenging questions that we may have in store for you. For anyone who doesn't know Mo swims on the Gold Coast at TSS. She's an 800 metre, 1500 metre and open water swimmer. She's actually the current Australian championship for 5 kilometres in open water, and she has her best results is second at the World Uni Games in the 1500 metres, and she came third at the World Cup for 1500 metres as well. At the moment, she's top 3 in the 1500 for Australia and top 14 in the world ranking, which is very impressive. But not only does she swim, Mo has also studied a Bachelor of Biomedical Science. So welcome, Mo.
Awesome. I'm studying a science degree as well and wearing matching jumpers. So there's obviously a lot of stuff in common happening today.
Yeah, I agree.
So again, Harriet and I have some questions for you. I'm still going to pull them out of my lovely beanie, which I've got here. But before we do that, the most important question, what tea is everyone drinking today?
I'm drinking a chai. I like them a little bit sweet and spicy. So yeah, I'm having a chai.
Nice. I'm having chai as well, but it's just brewing.
Oh yeah.
It's just brewing.
Matching again.
Brewing. I'm having a Rooibos, which is an African spice tea.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Okay, so without further ado, the first question is...
So Mo, this is a tough one. How have you dealt with disappointment throughout your swimming career?
Yeah, so I think anyone out there who's in sport will have dealt with disappointment in some way, shape or form. Often there's probably more disappointments than success stories out there. So yeah, I think for me, the most recent disappointment I've been through is we've just had the Australian Olympic trials, probably about 8 weeks ago now. So at that, I came third in the 1500. And in 3 of my races, the 400, 800 and 1500, I made all the Olympic qualifying times, but I didn't get to place. You have to be top 2. So the 1500, I've just missed in 3rd place. And so, you know, that's a really big, that's a pretty big disappointment to come away from. But I think as well, like other disappointments throughout my career, like just not hitting times you want to hit, or going through illness at times you just don't want to go through, illness leading into competitions. And even at the moment, going through disappointment with COVID, with things being cancelled and training being shifted. Yeah, I think there's a lot of disappointment that as athletes we're having to go through at the moment. Like a lot of extra disappointment. So dealing with disappointment, I think, you know, disappointment, it's a very real topic, and one that a lot of people, especially like even support networks around you, don't know how to always approach. You know, like I know, like I'm not the best person if someone's upset. Like I don't always know what to say to people. Like, you know, you put so much on the line for different results, and coming away from things like that disappointed. Yeah, it's real, and I think a lot of people out there have definitely experienced it. So yeah. So yeah.
We're both excited then. I guess it is something that people don't really talk too much about, disappointment. For you, so that I guess girls out there can kind of relate, how does it feel when you actually just are so close to something, but you don't quite get that mark? And swimming especially is so brutal. It's either you're in or you're not, and it can be just like so close.
Particularly for the Olympics, which only happens once every 4 years. Like how is that? feeling?
Yeah, so I think, well, in swimming, like there's two disappointments specifically at the Olympics. One, you have to make a time, and two, you have to get a place. So often people who've missed the Olympics by 0.01 in swimming. That wasn't me. I just missed the place. So for me, I missed it by like 1.5, 2 seconds, which over 1,500 meters is absolutely nothing. Yeah, so with the Olympics, like this time around, it's been a 5-year wait. You know, we've had to push through some pretty interesting times to even get to this. So yeah, it's a heavy thing to deal with. Even if you're fine mentally and physically, you still have to kind of go through this process of just accepting it and actually like just processing it for yourself to be able to move forward, I think. So yeah, what were you asking specifically, Harriet?
Like, how hard was it? What did you do? Did you like go home and lie in bed? Did you eat ice cream? Did
So like after trials, like no matter the result, whether it's good or bad, you have to go through, I think, the experience of coming off the back of a really big high when you work towards a goal for 1, or in this case 2 years. So you got that load to deal with on top of like the disappointment of results. So in my case, I did a massive PB. So the instant of the race, I was so stoked, coming away with the PB and cracking the 16-minute mark, which in women's 1500 swimming is a huge barrier to break through. But then as like the night went on and as like the next days came into play, I kind of realized as well what had happened at that I just missed out. So I was dealing with this combination of a huge success, but also like a huge disappointment, which was really challenging as well to deal with. Like, wow, like I've got to give it to myself. I've just achieved like this massive time that I've been wanting to get for ages. But I've also just missed like an experience of a lifetime, like making a team, an Olympic team, and different, like, you know, it's crazy. Like, I don't know if people understand it to the level of Olympics, but a lot of people couldn't understand it. Missing out maybe on like a school team, or missing a PB, or a time that's going to make like states qualifying or nationals qualifying, to know that you've worked so hard towards that and to miss it. Yeah, the next few days and months, it can keep going back to bite you in the butt a little bit. But yeah, I think for me, working through that, it was learning to accept that it's okay to be upset with my result, and that it's okay to be frustrated or kind of cranky. You don't want to wallow in that place, or you don't want to, like, I guess, wallow in your misery, but also like you've got to give yourself the chance to realize, like, you know, what's happened and you know, I think for me in that time, I was like, you know, it's a good time to reflect and be like, okay, I'm in sport. This is obviously something I have to deal with. And just learning to, I think, just realize, like, you know, look back on what you've done previously and also acknowledge the successes that you have had, is a big thing for me that I had to look at. Okay, look how far I've come. Like, a year ago, I wasn't going to be in that position. I wasn't going to be that close. It's also talking to like some people around me, like, you know, I spoke to like my mom and a couple of really close friends and even my coach, but even then talking to coaches sometimes, you know, they don't always know how to deal with the disappointment in the way that you're experiencing it. Like my coach was recommending, you know, look forward and just, you know, just get in and just try and go again. And it's like, I actually can't at this point in time. Like, I just need to like have time to process what's happened here. Like, I like mentally cannot be at the pool training right now. Like I need to like accept the fact that I just need a break from everyone around me as well, because in my situation, like a close teammate beat me, which is amazing. Like she's done a brilliant race, but at the same time, you know, it's all these mixed emotions often tied up with disappointment that can make it hard to process. So yeah, that's kind of like off the back of Olympics, what I've just been working through, and kind of I still am working through it. I keep thinking, oh, I'm past it, like I'm fine with it, I've accepted it, and then, you know, you see different things happen. Like I've just watched the Olympics and then you start thinking about it again. And I think, you know, it's okay. I think, or in that situation, it's fine to think about it, but also like, okay, it's done. It's in the past. You've already done your processing. Let's put it to the side. Let's refocus now, and let's reset those goals for next time. And yeah, just kind of, yeah, give yourself time to process. But then once you've processed, also remind yourself, okay, now's the time to sit down, reassess, and move forward. And for some people, that might be retiring and moving on from sport. And I think that's healthy to have that as an option. You don't have to be in sport. You're in sport by choice. And yeah, for me, I gave myself the option. I sat on it and I was like, you know what, I'm in sport. I'm here to deal with the disappointments and the highs and lows of it all. And watching, you know, fellow teammates succeed at the Olympics, knowing that it wasn't just a year's experience, that it was, you know, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years in the making, is also something that helped me look forward from this.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and it's so awesome to hear, like particularly at this time during the Olympics, hear the other side, because we're hearing all the success stories of the Olympics, and we forget that for every Australian Olympian competing today, there's someone like you who's on the other side, like experiencing the loss of that. And I think for young athletes, like dealing with loss like that can sometimes push them out of sport too young, like when they're really good and they just don't know how to deal with the disappointment, so they quit. But to be able to hear your story and how you dealt with it in a way that has allowed you to stay in the sport, I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I think with oh, you go, Harriet.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's also very brave of you to be able to talk about this while you're in it. Often people find it easy to talk about, oh, a few years ago I had a disappointment and it was really hard. You can tell now that you're still grappling with that, and it's still an uneasy thing to talk about. So I think that's super relatable for anyone, and it's probably in our culture that it's not like, you know, a normal thing to say how disappointed you are. It's like, oh, life's not too bad, let's move on, let's be positive. But in actual fact, it probably is helpful for you, well, helpful for everyone else, that we know that everyone else feels disappointed as well at some point.
Yeah, I think on that topic particularly, like knowing that like this COVID time for a lot of people, a lot of events are being cancelled. Like even me, what I was working towards post-Olympic trials, I had a meet coming up that was going to be on in 2 weeks. That was kind of like the secondary selection off the base of the trials. It's been cancelled, and like that was the thing that got me back on my feet to move forward from that disappointment. So, you know, it's something that I think it's really important to be able to, talk about it in these moments of being in it, because, like you said, it's easy to look back on and be like, oh, I was disappointed. But when you're in the actual moment of disappointment, it's so hard to grasp what you're feeling or how to, navigate it and how to get forward through with it. And I know even just talking about it with my coach, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how to explain what I'm feeling right now, because I'm stoked with the season I've had. I'm stoked with so many different things, but at the same time, there's just this feeling inside of me that deep in my gut, I just can't find the motivation. Like I have a motivation, but I don't have this immediate motivation every day at the moment to go forward and to go training and find that fire in your belly that you often have leading into some meets. And like you were saying, Lizzie, like a lot of younger athletes can quit over things like disappointment. And I think it's something that you've got to not make a decision in the instant and in that moment, because it's a very emotional decision otherwise. And I know people have come away and gone, I kind of regret quitting. And I think, you know, it's important just to sit in it and not rush the decision and not even say, oh, I'm going to retire right now. It's like, okay, no, I'm just taking a break. I'm stepping back. I'm sorting myself out. I'm just sitting in this place and just taking the pressure off your shoulders a little bit to just offer time to breathe and just be a human. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, that's such incredible advice. And I think particularly now during COVID, when a lot of us are in lockdown, like I know the last lockdown last year pushed a lot of people out of our sport. It's because training got too hard and it seemed like it was never ending. But if you just sit with it and like don't make rash decisions, and it can keep people in the sport. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think also like it's cool to hear this story from a swimmer's perspective, because me and Harriet obviously surf athletes, and when you have a bad race, we can often be like, oh, like it was the surf, it was the conditions, not my beach. When with pool swimming, it's so much harder because there's no really other variables that you can blame it on. So I think all the swimmers listening to this will find this really, really helpful if they are dealing with disappointment as well.
For sure. And if we touch on you mentioned motivation, that's something that we wanted to ask you a little bit more.
The second
we've really even written it down. Have there been times where you have felt unmotivated to keep swimming? And I think this is relatable to all of us right now. And sometimes I think we're watching the Olympics and we just see athletes and we think, wow, they must be so motivated to train all the time. But we know that's not true. And I think you've mentioned a little bit now that you're finding it a little bit hard. Just talk us through that at the moment and how it feels to not feel like you want to just keep all the time.
Yeah. So I think during the season, like especially leading into main comps, like your state comps or your national comps, it's really easy to find that motivation. You've got a goal, it's in the short term, but especially in the sport of swimming, we have 2 weeks off a year. So there's a lot of time in the year where you're like months and months out from your main competition and you're feeling unfit, or you're just struggling to find that extra push in training. But then like in times like this as well, off the back of like, or in moments of disappointment, and COVID, it's very hard to find that motivation. And I think even for me this week, like Gold Coast is in Southeast Queensland's gone into like an 8-day lockdown, and we've been really lucky. We haven't had to deal with much of this, but for me, my squad's not here at the moment. Most of them are in Tokyo. My coach is in Tokyo. So finding the motivation right now, like last time we went into a lockdown here, like I had, my close support training network around me to work through and keep me accountable. But this time around, so different. My coach isn't here. He doesn't, he understands, but when you're not quite here, you don't fully understand necessarily like the fact that the water's cold, or like the conditions to go for an open water swim aren't great. And off the back of trials, we don't do much land work leading into those last few weeks. So suddenly having to go for a run is like the biggest thing in the planet for me. I'm like, I don't normally run. So the last few days, I honestly haven't had the motivation to go training, if I'm honest. And I think that's okay in the short term. And having sat and having a few days of rest now, I will be now looking to contact my coach and contact a few of my support networks and going, okay, like I've had a few days off, like it's okay to have like days of low motivation, but okay, like looking at my long-term goals right now, what's the best thing for me? Is it best now to continue and have my 2-week break now? Or is it best to get in and have a swim and go design a new program around this time? But yeah, it's talking to people constantly when I'm in lockdown. That's the thing for me. It's talking to my coach, and he's really good at realigning my head into the right place for motivation in these times. But when things are normal and open up, and we're in the pool training like normal, there's days of low motivation where I just walk into the pool in the morning. I'm like, I just don't want to be here. Like, there's nothing in me right now that wants to be here. Like, waking up to the alarm this morning was hard, and walking through the gate was hard, and like just standing on the end of the pool, like I'm dreading it this morning. And in those moments, what I do is, top hint is never ever press snooze on the alarm. Always get up instantly. That you just don't question that one. But yeah, when I get to the pool, and if I'm having days like that, it's like, okay, don't overwhelm yourself with these extravagant goals today. The goal today is that you've turned up, and that's the win. You've turned up to training, you're here at the end of the pool, that's the win. And it's taking those little goals and going, okay, like, I've won my personal battle. I've gotten out of bed. I'm in the pool now, and I'm here to swim. And if I'm just turning the arms over today, that's okay. But if that motivation then goes on for like a few more sessions, that's when I'll have to touch back in with my coach and be like, okay, like I'm a bit unmotivated at the moment. I don't know what to do right now. And I think, you know, that's when we'll sit down together and we'll talk about either my goals, but if it's my goals, sometimes if I have really high goals and those goals are overwhelming, that can also really unmotivate me. So I think it's just having that communication with your coach particularly, and family, if that's who you feel comfortable talking with, or friends. So yeah, like even for me leading into Olympic trials, I had a moment where I was so flat and I was just like exhausted, which when I'm tired, my motivation goes to the floor. So sometimes I just have to go have a nap or something and that fixes me up. But yeah, this particular time leading into the recent trials, I was unmotivated. I was exhausted. It's been a long 2 years and I was like 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out. And I was like, why am I feeling so unmotivated? And, you know, it happened for a few days and it kept going on. So I messaged my coach and we organized a meeting, and, you know, he put the time aside and we talked about it and just talked through like how far I'd come. That was a big thing for me, looking at where I'd come from, not looking at where I was trying to get, because I'm an athlete where I can get overwhelmed looking at my big goals, get overwhelmed, like even watching the Olympics. I'm like, oh, my time's so far off the winners. It's like, Mo, like you're not trying to win right now. You're just trying to edge closer and get those little steps closer. So I don't know if there's anyone else out there, if either of you guys get overwhelmed, but that for me can be a big hindrance to my motivation as well.
Mo, you've just, I think, just explained how so many athletes feel, and you've done it so articulately. I'm listening to you being like, that's me, that's how I feel. And
yeah,
sometimes it's hard to talk about because, you know, we are lucky that we get to swim and paddle and do all these wonderful things, and sometimes it is hard to complain about it when it's like, you know, such a privileged thing to be able to have the opportunity to do, but you've just articulated that well.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, sorry, just off the back of that point, Harry, is like because we're in Australia and especially in Queensland, we're so lucky, like we haven't had lockdown. Everyone's like, you know, be positive, be happy. Like, why are you complaining? Why are you down? Why are you unmotivated? You have no reason to be unmotivated. And I think comments like that, like sometimes they're helpful, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, like we've got to acknowledge that I'm feeling unmotivated. And often the best thing for moments like that is just having a vent to someone. So if you're someone who's a friend of someone who's feeling unmotivated, like say it's like I was giving advice to my friends talking to me now, it's just sometimes it's just being a listening ear to let me vent about just what I'm going through, and that's all I need. So yeah,
totally. And that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we keep on coming back to this with every conversation we've had on this podcast, but the most important thing you can do with any emotion you're dealing with is to talk about it, because so many people in today's world don't talk about their feelings enough, even if the feeling is unmotivation, which can seem like such a personal thing. Reaching out and talking to your coach is a brave thing to do. I feel like not enough athletes probably do that, like communicate when they're unmotivated. I
think for me, like what I do as well to help me talk about it, because sometimes it's pretty scary going up to someone face to face and talking about it. Just send someone a text, like where, you know, for me, like sending a text, like it might be a bit cowardly to some people, but in that situation when you're feeling vulnerable, just send a text. And for me, that's what I did with my coach. I just sent him a text first. I was like, I can't face him right now. And then that for me was the conversation starter that I needed to talk about the topics I needed to talk about. Or even to a friend, like I couldn't call him. Sometimes I get a bit scared to get on the phone and call someone, but I just sent him a text and just said, hey, like I'm just feeling flat today. Like I just needed to know. And like, that's fair. Texting is fine. Because sometimes people, you know, they're like, oh no, make sure you be a man and talk face to face to someone. And yeah, it's okay to know that as well. Like sending a text, if that's all you've got in you, that's fine as well.
You've given so many great practical tips to anyone out there who's feeling unmotivated or dealing with disappointment. And I think that we can all learn so much from you. And we would love to talk to you all day about this, but you've been so generous with your time. So we just want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure that so many girls out there, I mean, I'm just listening and I feel inspired or just comforted knowing that, you know, everyone goes through this at the moment.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, thanks for making the space to talk about this. And yeah, if anyone is watching this and wants to reach out, like, yeah, contact me. And
Where can they find you, Mo?
so you can find me on Instagram. I'm sure they'll tag my Instagram on here. But yeah, or message either of these girls if you want to get in contact with me. And yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with you, even if you want to just have a talk about it.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of girls out there who are feeling really thankful for this conversation as well. We definitely are. So thank you again, Mo, and we might catch you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.